This is a recording of a lockdown Zoom. I'm going to do a presentation about the subject we're focusing on, and then there'll be some drawing practice based on the presentation. So I'm just going to share my screen. And there we go. So I'm going to be talking about windows. Windows as used in art. Hang on, there we go. So there's obviously two sides to windows, the inside and the outside, and there's the glass in between. So there's a lot of ideas in there. So we talk about windows as a motif, windows as a compositional tool, and as a metaphor, I guess, in the presentation, we'll be showing artists who've used them in those different contexts. So they kind of, where are we here? There we go. Glass wasn't put into windows until kind of the Middle Ages. That is the rose window from Chartres Cathedral, which was made in 1215. But windows as an idea in art had been used before that, but the glass created more of a consciousness about the, if you like, the idea of there being a lens between the inside and the outside. However, in that instance, in the Chartres Cathedral, the famous rose window, the glass itself is used as the medium. So the story is told through the coloured glass that's put in the window. In that case, it's the life of Jesus in the middle. Got the 12 disciples around him, 14 stations of the cross, that sort of thing, in the window itself. But there's the inside the church and the outside the church, which interior, exterior, and of course, pictures are themselves pictures and art are themselves a window. They're a window onto another world invented by the artist. So there's windows have lots of different ways of being interpreted in the world of art. That is on the left, picture of Albrecht Durer. Albrecht Durer, the German artist of the 15th century, and that's a self-portrait of him when he was living in Italy. He lived in Italy as a young man, very successful. He's in his mid-late 20s in that portrait. But obviously, it's the scene through the window that I'm interested in. That just sort of glassless window, looks like glassless to me anyway, and the scene beyond. So there he was in Italy, a successful young man. He travelled, and the idea of that landscape behind that people talk about is that the landscape is the one he's travelled across to get to Italy from Germany, over the mountains, down across the sort of green verdant plains to the land of plenty, if you like, Italy, where he was very successful. And so he's looking at his past through the window. But he's also looking at his future, because he wants to, or he feels the need to go back to Germany. And he's sort of slightly worried about that. He said to a friend, "How shall I freeze after this sun," the sun being Italy? "Here I am a gentleman, at home only a parasite." So he had no position in Germany. However, he went home and he was very successful. So he didn't need to worry about that. But in the instance of this picture, we're looking, one, at his past, where he's come from, and two, at his future, where he's going to go to. So the window becomes a kind of a portal, if you like, to look at time in some senses, in some cases. On the right there, the image of the engraving on the right is also by Durer. It's a picture of Saint Jerome. Saint Jerome, a well-known Christian saint, but he's from the 3rd or 4th century AD, and it's a Durer image again, has put him into a 15th century interior, a window with glass. But he's using the window as a compositional device to bring drama, to bring shape and form and drama to the scene he's trying to depict. And the windows are made up of round bits of glass. The kind of glass that windows were made of in that time is there at the bottom. So they weren't able to make floated glass that we have now to make windows. Glass windows, those pieces were made by blowing glass the same way you'd make a bottle or a vessel of some sort, and then flattened down and stuck together using the lead to keep them together. So windows, early windows like that, were not so easy to see through, to see the scene behind rather. They brought light in, but you couldn't see the scene behind. So they weren't, I guess, so developed, and artists hadn't developed the use of the idea of that glass being a lens, if you like, through which to interpret ideas. But he was using it as a way of bringing light onto an idea. So it's a compositional device. On the left, and that's seen through the open window, it's a metaphor, if you like. and on the right, it's a compositional device. And those are two paintings by Johannes Vermeer, famous Dutch artist of the golden age of Dutch painting, 17th century. The one on the left is called The Milkmaid, the one on the right is The Geographer. And they're both illustrations of the lifestyle of Holland, various people, things that people found, ideas that had value within the culture of 17th century Holland. The one on the left, The Milkmaid, is someone working in the dairy, making food for the house, engaging in a worthwhile task. She's making a bread pudding. There's stale bread on the table. She's pouring milk over the top of it in order to make bread pudding. She's in a dairy. It's cold. There's a little foot warmer behind her on the floor, that little wooden box that would have a ceramic brick in it, and she could warm her feet. So she was performing a valuable function. And when the Essential Vermeer website says about that painting, the Milkmaid, her measured demeanour, modest dress, and judiciousness in preparing her food conveys eloquently her, and yet unobtrusively, one of the strongest values of 17th century Netherlands, domestic virtue. So that's really what that's about. It's a way of illustrating and celebrating a value, and that's kind of what The Geographer is also about. It's about commerce and trade and travel. The geographer's looking at maps. He's considering, people moving around the world. The globe at the background apparently has the East Indies facing towards us, the Dutch East India Company, well-known trading company at the time. He's wearing a Japanese kimono. So that idea of trade and travel that was growing and bringing wealth and prosperity to Holland, obviously a value that was valued and worth drawing attention to. So the window shines a light and gives form to the concepts behind the painting. So the window used as a compositional device in those instances. That painting is also from the Golden Age, although it doesn't have the same kind of seductive qualities that the Vermeer paintings have. And it is using the glass of the window itself, rather like the way that, similar to the way that Durer was using it. And that is as a lens through which to see time, if you like. It's a painted by Jacobus Vrel, Woman at a Window Waving at a Girl, 1650. The woman's obviously older than the child. How old, we don't know, maybe very old, maybe not quite so much. She might be looking at her own child or a grandchild, or perhaps she's looking at the idea of herself in her youth. There's a separation. What the picture seems to illustrate or show is a separation between the two worlds, a separation of age and a suggestion of time. So, and that's kind of what the painting's about. It doesn't have those other qualities that the Vermeer painting has. That seems to be the focus of the whole idea behind the painting. So quite interesting, paintings might refer to that sort of idea beforehand, like the Durer one, but that seems to be specifically what that painting's about. And Vrel he's not such a well-known artist as Vermeer, and not so much information about him or evidence of his work. But that's a really interesting use of the idea of windows as a sort of portal onto seeing the past or the future life of the young girl also. There's Rene Magritte, famous Belgian surrealist, and he's making reference to a similar idea. I've put in his well-known painting of the pipe there that says "Sissy Nipples and Beat." This is not a pipe. So it's not a pipe, it's a picture of a pipe, and pictures perform a different function. That's kind of what he's referring to. And most of his art has reference to that sort of idea. And certainly some of these window paintings, and it's really the window or the house, the structure that he within is reference to the human body, if you like. He says, we see the world outside ourselves. We only have a representation of it inside ourselves. So that's what he's kind of talking about there. The window being the way that we perceive things outside ourselves. And the art brings the idea within. And the one on the left is called The Human Condition, 1933. The one on the right, The World of Images, 1950. And the idea behind that is he talks about us perceiving shards of reality. So obviously that's the window broken there has the shards of the image behind it, the idea of the image passes through the glass, and he's stuck it to the glass, and the glass is broken. There's shards of reality that we kind of perceive, but the actual reality exists behind us, and we can only take in bits of it. That's the kind of idea that he's referring to there. So he's using the window as a metaphor. Henri Matisse, famous colorist, French painter. That's Notre Dame, painted in 1902, from his Fauvist period, when he was using very, very bright, very strong colors. And he's using the window pretty much purely as a compositional device. That hard shape on the right-hand side is the frame of the window that he's looking through. So it's a compositional device, both in terms of color and the way it doesn't frame the painting, but it brings that hard wedge up of the river to a conclusion and draws attention to the cathedral. So that's window as compositional device. As is that. They're also Matisse paintings. On the left, the open window at Coulard, 1905, also from the Fauvist period. Matisse said he saw the open window as an invitation to look outside of reality into another world, in this case of color. So he's kind of using the window as an idea there, as well as a compositional device. And he said that he wanted color to apply color like explosives, so it really kind of went off on the surface. And also he wanted to simplify, like you might prune a tree. So those were some of the ideas behind what he was trying to do, and he used the window as a way of drawing attention to that idea. The painting on the right is the same window, obviously a completely different kind of painting, and I've talked about it before, but it's difficult to connect the two. The connection really being that he was drawn to it. It's a place he went in the south of France to work in various periods, and the clue to the meaning, if you like, is in the date. It was painted in 1914, the start of the First World War. So when things became very bleak, so he's got that blackness outside the window. His response to the war was difficult. His hometown had been taken by the Germans. His brother became a prisoner, and his mother wasn't well. Vlaminck and Durer, his fellow Fauvists, both signed up, and apparently he tried to sign up, but he couldn't because he was in his 40s. So it was a way of showing his response to a bleak and difficult time. Some people refer to it as his Guernica, Picasso's famous anti-war war painting. One of the interesting things about it is that he never exhibited it during his lifetime. It was exhibited after he was dead, and it was shown in America in 1966. I'll talk a wee bit about that later on, the influence that it has. So that's on the left, window as compositional device, and on the right, window as metaphor, as lens through which we see an emotional response. Those are two images by Pierre Bonnard. Bonnard was a French painter, contemporary of Matisse's. Friend of Matisse, is also regarded as a colorist. I've got a few slides of his work through windows because I want to show the development. It's part of an illustration of the idea of how artists develop ideas and extend their understanding of them. So those are two paintings from 1910. On the left, street scene with a viaduct. So he used the viaduct as a way of framing the drama, just the people walking up the street. And on the right, Through the Panes, Paris, same thing. And they're not particularly bright or colorist paintings, but he's discovering the potential of window frames. Those two are slightly later. Open window toward the Seine in Vernon on the right, and window at Uriage, 1918. The one on the right's, well, they're both interesting, but you can see there he's kind of investigating that idea of the rectangle of the window being a compositional device, how it obviously echoes the sides and the top and bottom, but also the door, the picture, the tabletop, the chair, and the panes within the window, creating a set of compositional elements, rectangular parallel compositional elements. So he's partly looking at that. But he also, one of the interesting things about those paintings is that the figure in the right on the door, in that he very often puts figures just kind of creeping into the edge of the picture. I haven't cropped that at all. That's the way the picture is framed. So the figures are very often kind of fleeting influences at the side of the picture. They're not the focus of the picture. The image on the left is the windows. It's interesting because it's kind of an oblique view. He's got this, he's looking kind of sideways through the window at that house outside, and there's as much of the wall inside the room as there is of the house outside. So it's just looking at how you might use a window compositionally in that picture on the left. Those two are slightly later again. Open Window, 1921 on the left, and Breakfast Room overlooking garden, 1931 on the right. There he's separating the inside and the outside with colour. Outside is blue and green, inside is yellow and orange. Cooler outside, warmer inside. But bottom right, there's the figure in the chair there with a little cat. That's probably Mark, his wife. So there's a definite separation of inside, outside, obviously with colour. There's a sort of emotional separation, if you like, the use of colour, the way the colours are, and the verticals and horizontals. It's more a sort of sideways look, so there's a different sense of depth in the picture. So the compositional element is different. The one on the right is more straight on, certainly compositional, but you get that same colour separation of inside and outside, and the little figure kind of creeping in on the left there, which is what he commonly did. That one's the last one, and for me the most interesting. It was studio at the Cannes with Mimosa, 1938 to 46, to go out to paint. It's a much more developed use of the window from those very first ones that we looked at. The colours obviously more developed also, but you've got this kind of oblique view out the window. I think we're up on a balcony. That little balustrade at the front looks like that's what that is, the front of a balcony. Looking downwards through the window with the diagonals, the balcony and the astragals forming sort of zigzags. And once again, the little figure bottom left creeping in, suggestion of someone there in the room. But that's development and how he's breaking up the space, to breaking up the shapes and his perspective on the room. You can kind of see he's looking at how those shapes relate to the edges. He's much more conscious of that, and think of how the energy of the picture, that sort of thing, how those lines affect our understanding of the space and the energy of the picture. I look at that in conjunction with a couple of artists further down the road, 20th century modernists further down the road. But I think that's a really good illustration of how he developed his looking at windows as a compositional device. Those are Winifred Nicholson's paintings. Winifred Nicholson is an English artist, mid-late 20th century, English painter, who developed these things that she called windowscapes. She would put objects on the windowsill and paint them, usually flowers with the landscape behind. And I don't think it's so much of a psychological, if you like, component to those pictures, or nothing, I think, obvious. She enjoyed flowers, she enjoyed painting flowers, and she enjoyed painting the landscape beyond. The idea of light, we looked at the Durer picture with the light being used as a compositional tool. Well, she's kind of doing the same thing, although it's much more straight on. She also wraps the flowers in tissue paper. Those kind of things around the pots are tissue paper, because she was interested in the translucency of the way that the light came through the tissue paper. And she had various paintings later in life which were pretty much all about light. That is Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper is an American painter in mid-20th century who painted a lot of interiors and often through windows. He painted other pictures too, rural images, people at the seaside, that sort of thing. But he painted a lot of images of interior people in cities. Now, so far we've looked, I think, exclusively at people looking out of windows. So then with Hopper, you start looking into windows, and a lot of people saw them as being a bit voyeuristic, and I guess they are. He is often referred to as talking about the loneliness of the urban American existence. It's an idea that he kind of railed against, but eventually he had to accept that it was perhaps an unconscious engagement with that idea. He also said that the artist the art the artist makes is an expression of the artist's inner life. So he is okay with the idea that what he's painting is himself. He's painting the emotional and psychological response to the interior, the human interior. That painting is called Nighthawks, a 1942 really famous painting, used referred to in lots of other areas. Been used as Ridley Scott referenced it in Blade Runner, his film. There's been a Hollywood version of Dennis Potter's Pennies from Heaven in 1981, and they used the diner for that. It's been used as a set, Rigoletto in English National Opera. And The Simpsons, that bottom right there, The Simpsons even used it in the episode of Homer versus the 18th Amendment. So you've got a whole lot of American motifs there being put together. The American Constitution, the Simpsons, Hopper's Nighthawk itself. And The painting itself, Hopper's paintings themselves, they're rather like darker versions of Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell was that kind of apple pie, painted that apple pie version of America. And Hopper is more a sort of, it's not the dark underbelly, but it's certainly a darker vision of America, a more introspective version, look at America in what he does. Those two paintings there at the window, 1940 on the left, Room in New York, 1932 on the left, and then at the window, 1940 on the right, looking again at sort of people's sort of voyeuristic interpretation of people's lives. He used often his wife as a model in his paintings, and there's a suggestion, that one on the left there, that might be him. Apparently he was very well read, he liked reading a lot. So there's a suggestion that's about his domestic life, domestic situation. It was actually, the one on the left was an inspiration for Stephen King's short story, The Music Room, in 2016. And although Hitchcock's Rear Window was derived from Cornell Woolrich's short story, there is a clear connection between Hopper's paintings, which Hitchcock would have been aware of, and the film itself. So, and they are very, very kind of documentary of the interior life of America, if you like. Those two paintings there I find really quite interesting when put next to each other, and considering that sort of indoor, outdoor, interior, exterior thing. Painting on the left, Morning Sun, 1952, where the woman is he used his wife as a model there, in both of them actually, drinking in the sunshine, that simulation from outside as a warming and positive influence. The woman on the right there, back to the window, facing inwards. The light in the room is brought by those lights in the ceiling reflected in the glass. So much more about introspection and inwardness. An interesting pair of paintings to put together, and the one on the top right has, for me, quite a strong connection to the Jacques Frel one we talked about earlier on, in terms of the interior life. That's the Matisse painting that I talked about, top left, painted in 1914, prompted by the darkness of the First World War. Richard Diebenkorn, who painted the painting next to it with the woman sitting with her arms and legs folded, saw the painting and he cited it as being quite a big influence on him. And the idea of it being about the First World War is not the thing that he was engaging with. He was interested in the simple rendering of space in a picture. So how there is space where the darkness is, it has a sense of perspective, even though it's a very, very flat thing we're looking at. So he has this figure kind of looming out of the darkness, not as a reference to the war, but as a way of exploring and illustrating the idea of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface. So that painting, the idea that painting was originally rooted in, was changing as another artist took it and did something else with it. And that's how artists and art develops. People taking the seed of an idea somewhere and applying it to something that they are more engaged with or are aware of or is stimulated by. So and the bottom paintings, the bottom two on the left, are from his Berkeley period when he was living in San Francisco. And he played with windows a lot, with voids, with parallel lines parallel to the top and bottom and sides, and the depth, how you create that sense of depth with light and dark, which is exactly what Matisse was doing. And although there are references to interior domestic scenes and props that you recognize, chairs, that sort of thing, it's really the shapes and the sense of depth that he's looking at there. There's certainly a sense of Americanness in the types of houses that he shows in his paintings from time to time. But it's more the sort of compositional window as compositional tool. And I think that the stage he went to after the Berkeley period, that's that painting on the right, his Ocean Park series, where he just moves into pure hard-edged abstraction, where the metaphor is no real part of his work. It's about the formal properties of a picture and how you build it and how we respond to it, how you respond to it. It's not without emotion, absolutely not, but it doesn't have that same obvious connection to window as metaphor. And that's another connection to the same idea. So the way he's dividing up the surface is very similar to the way that Bonnard was looking at the surface of the picture, the space within the picture. So although Bonnard was not considering hard-edged abstraction, using very similar ideas, Diebenkorn would be conscious of Bonnard, obviously Bonnard not conscious of Diebenkorn. So ideas develop as art moves on, and artists influence each other in the way they see. That's also Diebenkorn. He lived in, the house he lived in Berkeley had a veranda at the back, a balcony at the back. That's the back of the house, and he's on the balcony with some mates there. And he used the balcony in his picture also as a visual tool, a way of breaking up space, creating space within a picture. There's obviously an element, the element of people in that picture. There's a chair and an open book and a cup and a plate. So that suggests evidence of people, but they're used also as compositional devices, shapes, relationships. So he's using the balcony as an extension of the window to create frames and shapes within the picture plane. So when I started thinking about using windows as a theme for a zoom, I came across this image. It's a David Hockney drawing, much simpler. It's not really, it doesn't have any of those deeper meanings, if you like. It's pretty much a flower in a window. So that's what we're going to think about in the practice that we do. I'm just going to stop the share there. And I'm going to go to my hands, which are there. Hang on. There we go. Hang on. There. So what I want you to do is take a piece of paper and draw a rectangle about A4 I've got it as being 21 by 29 centimeters. And then I want you to create this cross on it as a reference, as a way of looking at the composition and looking at relationships, making that a bit easier to understand. So a rectangle, we've got two drawings, so you need two of them, but you can stop the video and do it as we go. So rectangle 21 by 29 with a cross on it, 10.5 across, and then 14.5 down to help with the composition. What we're going to work with, I'm just going to move that there so I can do two beside each other, is that image. Now I tend to work on images in the zooms just because it makes it easier, and having the thing in front of us wouldn't make that much difference because it's flat on your screen anyway. It's not quite the same thing, but that's what I'm thinking about. So this photograph of view of one of my windows has the same cross on it, so that really refers to this. So we can look at the shapes and the relationships in each area of the picture and how they relate to each other. The first thing, and one of the motivations for me to do this is I was thinking about the hard geometry of the window frame and also of the vase, and then the sort of softer organic nature of the daffodils, the springtime daffodils. So we're going to look at those two things and use a couple of different, mostly pencil, mostly graphite for most of it, but then a bit of wash, a bit of ink wash, diluted ink wash on the flowers and the landscape, a little bit of pencil on that too. So first thing I want to think about is this bit, and I want to use a ground. So I've been using grounds in some of the exercises we've been doing so far, but I just want to do it on this part of the picture for the moment. I want to leave this clear, nothing on that at all. So I need to work out where this window frame is. And this part of the window frame it doesn't quite go, it goes a bit further than halfway across that section there. So I'm going to put it about there, okay? Make a wee mark on my drawing about there. And with this one, it's perhaps a wee bit easier. If you look at the bottom part, the bit in front of the windowsill here, it's I did that. It's rather like what Giorgio Morandi does, the Italian artist who paints a lot of still lives. He often showed the front of the table surface he was working on to help create the depth of the image he was making. So that's what I want to do there. I want to show the front of the windowsill. So I'm going to mark that about there. And then this, where the window frame is about halfway between here and the top of the window ledge. So I might just mark that about there. And then what I want to do is I'm going to draw the lines with the ruler. I want to emphasize that hard edge geometry in the image, and the flowers being more hand drawn, so we get that difference in the kind of line that's being made. And I'm going to use a ruler to draw these lines. That one there, and that one there. Now you can measure it, but I'm going to do it with eye, I think. Look at this gap in here. That'll do. Okay, I can drop that bit out there. That line will disappear in a second. I'll show you how. Now I want to put a ground on this bit, this L shape here. I want to put a ground on. The way that I normally suggest to people is that you take a pencil sharpener and pencil and sharpen your pencil onto the surface, get rid of the wood, and find something to rub it in to make it dark like that. What I cheat because I've got one of these big pencil sharpeners that's got a whole lot of graphite in the bottom, so I can just sprinkle that on and rub that in. Now you'll find that it goes over the line here. It goes over this line. That's okay. I'll show you how to deal with that in a minute. And I want it to be quite dark, so I can get it really dark because I've got all of those shavings that can go over the thing. So, and I'm going over that line. So this line's kind of disappearing as I do it. That line there. That's okay. So make it quite dark. Then in order to bring, hang on, shake those bits off. In order to bring back the hard edge of that line, what you can do is take your ruler, put it there like that, and just rub it down to that edge. Don't worry if you lose a bit of that line, you can put it back, but it's so that rub that down to there, and then same here, ruler on that line. There you go, and you bring about that hard edge sort of geometry of the window shape. So you've got a good start there. The next thing I want to think about is that the front of the window ledge. And now I've kind of lost my line, but I'll just bring it back by doing that. And then what you can do, you can make it dark in whatever way you see fit. But if I place the ruler on my drawing like that, I can use it as a mask. And then take, can you see what I'm doing? Just I'm drawing up against the hard edge of the ruler, and it's so there, like that's quite good. You can bring back the edge of the drawing if you want by rubbing out a bit, but it's not that important. There you go. And the next thing I want to do is think about where, so there's in the image, hang on. There we go. So you've got the wall here, the inside wall of the window, and the windowsill. I want to look at where they are. But in order to get to create those, we need to have the same width of window frame here at the bottom and at the side. Okay. So I want you to think about how wide it is. We'll make it about that. It has to be the same width here. Okay. Which is about that. Here we go. That'll do. Then I'm going to do as before and do it with the ruler. Line and a line. There you go. It goes up. And that is connected to that. And what I want to do, so you'll see that the wall is lighter than the window frame, and I'm going to just clean that out with the rubber, as I did up there. But I'm not going to use the ruler. There's a little shadow on the inside of that, next to the window frame, and I'm going to rub this out, but I'm not going to rub it hard up to that line there. I'm going to leave a sort of softer edge to it and a bit of darkness in the corner to suggest that shadow all the way to the bottom. And here on the window ledge too. There you can, if you want, use that to stop yourself rubbing out the window ledge. So there you go, you got that. And the last thing I'm going to do to the, probably the last thing I'm going to do to the window is to create, so there are these two wee lines where the molding of the window changes direction, turns at 90-degree returns. So you get these little light white lines. And to make those, I'm going to use the ruler again. I'm going to put it on where the window is, and with my rubber. So I've got a rubber which is quite sharp. I've cut it off and made a wee edge to it like that. And I'm just going to run that down, edge of my ruler, that way. And then that way. And the same again for the second line. Oops. So that's quite nice for the those hard, clean white lines. And you can, get rid of little things by rubbing them out. So that's the most of the structure of the window in. So we're going to think about the vase now. So let's look at the vase now, getting the vase into the drawing. So we can use these cross lines again as reference for where the vase is. It's, this distance here is about that. That distance there is about that, and it comes nearly to the front of the windowsill. Okay, now you can use a ruler or you can draw this freehand if you want. The other thing is it's the top of the ellipse of the vase goes to, I don't know, about that height. So that gives us the kind of the limits of the vase. The thing that I would do differently now if I was going to do this again, I would change. This is the skyline, the horizon of the campsies that we see from that window, and also and that is pretty much at the same height as the top of the vase, and I would do that differently if I was doing it again. And also the surface of the water is pretty much at the same height as the window frame here, and I would make that differently if I was doing it again. I'd probably raise the level of that. But anyway, they are what they are. So the level of the campsies about there, you can change it if you wish, and you can change the level of the water if you wish also. So I'm going to draw this freehand. You can use a ruler if you want. See what I'm doing? Yes, you can. There we go. And that ellipse, well, you're not going to see much of it once the daffodils go in, but it's something like that. And once you've established those elements of the drawing. For me, I'm going to get rid of these crosshairs now, the cross on the bit of paper, so they don't get in the way anymore when I come to work with the daffodils. There you go, that'll do. The other thing before we go any further to think about perhaps is this. So in behind the vase, the wall, it seems lighter. Okay, the glass makes a mistiness, refraction, and makes what's behind seem lighter. So what I'm going to do is take my rubber, and I'm going to rub that out a bit. I'm not going to completely erase it. I'm just going to make it a bit lighter, a bit more ambiguous, the way things often appear through glass. So that'll do like that. Okay, maybe a bit. Also like that. And so we've used graphite for all of this so far. And I'm going to use mostly washes on this, ink washes, diluted ink washes, very diluted ink washes on most of what's going on in here. And the other thing I'm going to use is a fine liner pen. Or if you have one, you might want to use a drawing nib, or if you don't have either of those things, perhaps a very fine brush. I'll come to that later. So what I want to do is draw in where the daffodils are. Now I've rubbed out the cross, and it doesn't matter if they're exactly the same configuration to what's going on here, just as long as there's some sort of sense of them. I'll give a suggestion, myself an indication of where the I haven't drawn this in either, where the stalks are. So that was the water. So, but when they go through the water, you get that refraction, so they shift over. You know, the stalk comes into the water here and then shifts over, and we'll reflect that when we come to put them in with a wash later on. So I'm just going to show pretty much where the daffodils are. Not too worried about great detail. Just that sort of thing. Okay, simple line drawing of where the daffodils seem to be, but I'm not too worried about whether it's a perfect facsimile, as I keep saying, of the photograph. So I've managed to raise mine up a lot higher. I didn't mean to do that, it's just the way it's happened. I'm not going to rub it out and start again, I'll just work with it the way it is. So the other thing you can do is rub out the bits of the vase as you draw across them. There we go. They're not in exactly the right place, but that's okay. It's a bit chunky. It'll do. It'll do. That one's a bit too high. I'm gonna lower that one. In fact, they're kind of too much separation between these. I'm going to draw these three again. All low and all high. It looked a bit odd. One. Okay. Still not perfect, but better. So there you've got simple line drawings of the daffodils. You've got your vase in there. So what I want to do now, start working with the washes. Now you can take drawings as far as you want, and I'm going to be talking about what's happening in front of me. Yours will almost certainly be different, maybe based on the photograph that I've got here, but your outcomes, the way that things happen for you will be different. So try to respond to what you're doing, and don't just necessarily do exactly the same as me. So I've got my wash here. I'm going to put, now what I want to do is end up with something like this. Okay, quite simple drawing of the daffodil. And there's about 3 or 4 washes on this. A very simple one, very light wash just over the whole thing to create this base layer. Then I'm going to do a second one for these wee lines where bits of the petals overlap and there's another thickness. Then a darker wash for the bell of the daffodil, and then maybe a second darker one. And I'm using the fine liner to pick out the lines and the edges once I've done that again. So the other thing I'm going to do is there's obviously there's something on the landscape here. So I'm going to put the wash over that also and over the where the vase is. So it'll dry slightly lighter. Oh, that's too dark. What happened there? That's annoying. Never mind. So just so the whole thing, although the daffodils are bright and sunny springtime flower, they are, if you sort of scrunch up your eyes, they're darker than what's behind, or there's a greater value to them rather than darkness to them than what's in behind them. So that's why I'm putting the wash over them, and the landscape behind, the sky behind will be lighter. Over the landscape also. And the vase. And you can add more to these washes, these lower down washes also as you go on later on. so that where the surface of the water is often lighter, so the reflection of the light. So I'm going to leave that lighter, and we'll bring in other things down here as we go along. So that's me put one wash on. Sorry, that shouldn't have been so dark there. Clean that out. Yeah, I've got a hairdryer, so I'm going to put the hairdryer. I'm going to actually do that too. I'm going to put the hairdryer over that whole thing, dry it off. Cool. I'm going to put in those other bits. So see where the where there's these little overlaps and things. I'm going to put them in also with the wash. Now the stems themselves are quite dark, but we'll come to that in a wee bit. The other thing about the wash is it's it's a fluid medium. It won't be exactly where it looks like in the photographs, but that's okay. That's fine. So it's just the flower petals I'm thinking of just now, not the bell. I'll come to that in a second. Yeah, that one's a bit messy, but hey, well. I'll probably put another wee wash over this to make it darker than where the vase is, just slightly, but it won't be darker than the window frame, I hope. It's starting to work okay. We'll go with that with the wind. We're going to have a look at the bell of the daffodils now, and that's a lot darker. So it's an orange, which is a lively color, bright lively color. But in the photograph there, if you scrunch your eyes up, you'll see that they're darker. So I'm going to put a darker wash over that. And it's one of those odd things. By making something dark, you actually make the light thing lighter. So it makes the brightness of the petals hopefully seem brighter by putting something darker in. Relationships, all about relationships. So yeah, that's okay. I'm dry that off. Maybe do it again. And then we'll have a think about the stalks. I'll use the that's pretty good. I'm going to do the stalks with the darker wash. I may even make that a wee bit darker again. So there's quite a lot of contrast in the stalks, and I'll come back to the fine liner pen in a minute. So it's that contrast in the stalks that brings quite a lot to the drawing. Now these stalks overlap. I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to draw them in, and there's that. So they come down to meet the water, okay? And they go through the water, and then you don't see them again until they come below the level, this front edge of the thing. So there's that refraction. And I'm not too worried about how faithful I am to the photograph, as long as they're there. Nope. Oh, let's see, I just went 3 steps. And that one. There's a leaf in there also. I might come in and do a second wash on those, darker, but so that's that. Hang on. You can lift out, if you clean your brush, you want to lift out, you can just clean your brush and with clean water on it. Take a rag, yeah, lift it out a wee bit. So it's starting to take a bit of shape now. I'm going to dry that off with the hairdryer. There we go. That there's a bit of refraction in the edge of the vase here, so I'm going to put that in with the light wash again. Show the edge of that. There's also that bit at the bottom. I'm going to take the darker wash to do that. Okay, that sense the bottom of the vase. Oops. The next thing I want to do is take my fine liner and define the edges of the daffodils. Oops. What this is really nice for, I really like the sort of wrinkly, crinkly edges of the bell of the daffodil. It's quite nice for emphasizing that. And it just contains that sort of organic feel of the watercolor. Gives it a wee bit of contrast, bit of an edge. That was a bit messy, but hey ho. So if you just, you've got to find the edges of the daffodils. Oh, not that one. That. Like that. So yeah, it's kind of sort of taking shape. Yeah, it's going okay, I think. So a couple things you could do, you could make the stalks darker. I think that might add something. There's also the thing we haven't really looked at all is the landscape. So here in the campuses, there's these kind of contour lines that show different sort of ridges of the hill. So I'm going to put those in. There's a couple of houses down here. I'll show those, and then there's there's trees and bushes in here, and we're going to sort of do something else for them. So for the houses are fairly simple, just the roofs that go like that. So this helps to bring depth to the whole thing, perspective, sense of depth. Now the other thing, we'll look at that rim in a bit. So I'm just going to do a bit of this. And that mark we've been talking about a bit, that just sort of random organic thing I'm going to use down here for the trees, and bit lighter in here. Maybe have some sort of suggestion of that. But should maybe do that with the watercolor, but there's that. The edges there. Random mark. Probably bring a wee bit of the difference with the wash also in here. That helps to create a bit more of a sense of depth in what you're looking at, a bit more perspective. Now you can go on and do as much as you like to that. But making drawings, making art, a lot of it is about making choices. You've got to decide what you want to do and when you want to stop. I'm just going to make these a wee bit darker in the top bit. Oops. There. I'll probably just stop there so I'll move on. But that's it. So my main reason for doing it is when we're looking at windows. Windows, I think, as a subject for a picture motif. The hard edge geometry of this of the window itself, of the elements of the window, against and also of the vase, against the more sort of soft organic nature of the daffodils themselves. And you, like I say, you can work into that as much as you like, or just take the more bare approach that we've done so far. So that is some daffodils in a window. So I'm going to move on to the second drawing now. I'll probably put these on the end so you've got still of them if you want to work on it, and the drawings also on the end of the video. So put that to the side. Second drawing is a wee bit quicker, and it's based on this. That's my kitchen table. It's a bit of paper again with the cross on it, so we can work out where things are. And the composition is created by the light coming through a window. That's what this is. So you've got these objects on the table, and you've got this rectangle of where the photograph is. Now makes it a wee bit simpler to work when you're working off a photograph, because you're not translating from 3 dimensions. But if you are working from something in front of you, on a table in front of you, you might find it useful to use a viewfinder. So a viewfinder is just a bit of card with a hole cut in it. Like, that's a viewfinder there. Okay, and you can look at something through a viewfinder, and you get, oops, if those objects are on the table, the viewfinder starts to perform the same function as the edge of your photograph. Okay, so viewfinders are handy things when we're looking at defining an area we want to work with. So that's the edges of the photograph perform the same function as the viewfinder, if you like. But we've drawn these lines on to help us see the relationship. So first thing we're going to look at is the shapes on the outside, the shapes that relate to the edges, okay? And then later on, look at the shapes, the objects that are inside that. So you want to look at where this is. Hang on, I'll just shift this across. So you're going to end up with a drawing something like that. It's a quicker drawing than the first one, okay? So I want you to look at, first of all, where that table meets the edge. It's about halfway down. So on your bit of paper, shift that over. So you'd be looking at something like that. Where's this one? It's kind of just a wee bit higher, right? The corner of the table there. Hang on. Corner of the table. That's about, I don't know, there, something like that. And the really important part of this composition is created by this little wedge wee triangle here. So that's an edge of the table. And although it's parallel, physically parallel to that, the way we see it, we know it's parallel, but it's not the same orientation. Okay, it's more, so it goes from about there to about something like that. That goes okay. Now, how do these chair backs relate to that? So it's about halfway across, but there to about there. Okay, what's this one that's a bit smaller? To about there. Oops, there's a wall behind. Step. That's kind of all those things. Then the shapes, the internal shapes. So you've got this coffee pot thing here. How do we work out with that? Is look at the relationship of that to, well, to the bottom, to this line here, that segment. Bottom of it's about there. It's about that far in. Yeah, it's about that far in, and it goes up to. So you got. That sort of shape. You've got a wee spout there. You've got a lid. Handle. Milk jug. About there. This cup is being cut across both by this line and that line. So it's doing that to about there. So you've got, when you're doing round objects, even though you may not see the whole, all of the contour of it, it's really helpful to draw the whole thing. And the cup is that, coffee inside. Yep. Book, but that far from the bottom. That corner and in. A bit higher than that. That sort of thing. And once you've worked out where everything is, you can draw out these, rub out these lines. Back in what needs to be back in. You got shadows. Now that, there you go. That's too high. That's too high. That's too low. Never mind. I'll shift this down a bit. Yep. So I've just rendered it really, really simply and quickly with pencil, and that's really what I had in mind when I was started out the project. just layers of building up layers of pencil. What I think might have helped in this is if I put a little wash down first on the whole surface. So apart from on the really light bit, so there's a a shadow being cast by the window here, kind of coming across the table and cutting across the book. Okay. And the rest of the book, most of the book is quite hang on, like that. Down. The rest of the book is really light. This corner of the mug, the white interior of the mug, the cup, is really light. So that there, I wouldn't put the wash on. The inside of the jug is really light, and that chair is really light. So I'm going to put a wash on everything apart from those bits. If I can find, hang on just a second. So I went and I got myself a bigger brush to make this a wee bit quicker. There's the wash. So I'm going to put a wash on everything apart from those bits I just highlighted. Hang on. Right, get that off. So that's that. Now what I want to do is to start using the pencil to render the light and dark. I'm using a 6B to do that. So I'll build up layers of lightness and darkness. So now I accidentally went over this with the wash, so that's not what I intended to do. Hey ho, accidents happen. So I'm going to do this quite quickly. It's an exercise. It's practicing the drawing skills. So don't get too overwhelmed by the correctness of what you're doing. By that I mean the sort of perfection of edges, that sort of thing. I want you to try to get the render, the differences in value. Okay, that's what I'm interested in. And this is a darker pencil. So there's obviously the shadows that go from across here. That's quite. So some bits of the wash I'll go over, some of the wash I won't. So I didn't do the wash in the example I've shown you, but I think it seems already to be helping to me. I might be wrong. Yeah, it's working okay. So that'll do pretty much, I think, for that. You could have now you can do this with any medium. You can do it with the watercolor with the wash all the way to the end, or you can do it like I've done with the pencil. You can do the first one was just with the pencil. See how it takes you. I'll put this on the end, the image on the end of the video also, and you can refer to them afterwards, or if you want to have another go. Yeah. So. Right, that'll do. So, first drawing was about the looking at the okay. The window, the hardness of the geometry of the window frame against the softness, the more organic feel of the daffodils, using graphite with a ground on the sort of L shape, and then washes and a more that more kind of chaotic, random feel of the washes on the daffodils and the landscape, and a bit of pencil to help create the depth of the landscape beyond. So that was that window one. And this one was very much about the light, casting light to create the composition on the surface, light through a window. And it was more to do with, if you like, the building the composition, understanding relationships, building those relationships, and then of shape, and then of value, of lightness and darkness. I used the pencil, you could use anything you like. And that was the exercise. Okay. I will put this together, put the images on the end, and try to post another one again soon. Okay, bye.